Hi there, and welcome to Naturally Recovering Autism. I am your host, Karen Thomas, and I want to thank you so much for being here and being a proactive parent and getting the resources that you need to let your child live their most fulfilling and independent life possible. When my own son was diagnosed with autism, I was told to drug him and try behavioral therapies, and there was nothing else that we could do for him but manage his symptoms the rest of his life. But I didn't want to do that. Fortunately, my background in craniosacral therapy of now 30 years let me know that the brain can and does heal, but I didn't know that much about autism. What I did know is that I didn't want to just mask the symptoms with dangerous drugs. I wanted to find the causes and work with them naturally. And fast forward, it took me a decade and a lot of time and effort, but today my son is no longer diagnosable with autism after being told it could not happen. So I'm here to share with you valuable resources to save you the time and some of the expense that I had to spend to figure it out, and to help you let your child lead to their best results possible. Every child's level of recovery is different, but we know that children who couldn't sleep through the night are sleeping now through the night and happily. Their immune systems are now strong where they were once sick all the time. Children who were nonverbal and their parents were told they could never speak are now speaking. Children who were getting D's and F's in school are getting A's and B's, and those that were so anxious all the time and couldn't sit still and were uncomfortable in their own bodies are now calm and happy and relaxed, and they're leading fulfilling and independent lives with friends. This is what we want for our kids. So I'm here to share the resources with you so that you can get the best results for your child, the best possible. And you can start that right now with my free download of the top 7 foods to eliminate beginning today, of the top foods that are the most inflammatory and toxic that are contributing to those physical and behavioral symptoms of autism that your child is having. They're making his life uncomfortable. So you can get that right now at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/7 foods. And feel free to share that with anybody you know who would be interested. And I will also link to it in today's show notes. There's, of course, a lot more than diet, but this is something you could start doing today that will begin to reduce those symptoms. And I'm happy to share everything I can with you. So right now, let's dive into today's episode. Hi there, and welcome back once again. I am here to share natural solutions to help keep your family, you and your children healthy, especially in the winter months. And I've always said that it is not cold and flu season, it's low vitamin D season. And so today I'm going to be talking about the absolute best natural flu fighter and viral fighter that there is. Now, there are some others that we can add into this, but I'm going to focus today on vitamin D3. Vitamin D is one of the most important vitamins and one that most people are deficient in. And be sure, again, when you purchase it, it is vitamin D3 with the number 3, because it's the most bioabsorbable form. Many neurodevelopmental conditions are associated with vitamin D deficiency, such as depression, lack of motivation, dementia, Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, muscular sclerosis, and schizophrenia. Vitamin D helps neurons in the brain grow and survive, and it's important in brain development and its protection as well. It also decreases heavy metal damage to the brain, and it is a natural anti-inflammatory. So as we approach winter months, wherever we live, anytime the winter months approach, we have less exposure to vitamin D from the sun. I've always said, again, it is not flu season, it's low vitamin D season. This is why the prevalence of colds and flus and other viruses is so strong in the months that we have less sunlight and less skin exposure to the sun due to the long sleeves and long pants that we're wearing, and of course, more indoor time. Vitamin D is essential for fighting both viral and bacterial infections. It seems to be especially important in fighting viruses, and is a far better choice in fighting them, especially the flu, than anything, especially other toxin-filled options that only cover one strain of influenza. A 2009 pediatric research journal stated that children and infants deficient in vitamin D are more susceptible to viral infections. And there are several studies that go on about this, and I'll link to a few in today's show notes, which will be at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/178. But several large observational studies have shown a link between a deficiency in vitamin D and respiratory tract infections such as colds, bronchitis, and pneumonia. Any mechanism that prevents UVB absorption, such as clothing, increased pollution, longer periods spent indoors, etc., work in similar fashion to prevent cutaneous production of vitamin D3. Now, that cutaneous means from our skin seeing the sunlight, it actually converts it to vitamin D3. So our skin needs to see the sun. Using the definitions from above estimates such suggestions that 1 billion people around the world may be vitamin D insufficient and deficient. In characterizing the global health status of children, recognition of vitamin D insufficiency has increased significantly, particularly over the past 20 years. Below normal vitamin D concentrations in adults have been strongly associated with tuberculosis, influenza, autoimmune diseases, cancer, including prostate, colon, and breast, and myocardial infarctions. Expanded studies in infants and children are also exploring the effects of vitamin D insufficiency and type 1 diabetes, as well as investigating the risk of developing allergies and atopic diseases. Many problems for infants arise in utero. If a woman is deficient in vitamin D during her pregnancy, then the deficiency will be passed on to the baby. And this can be especially common for babies that are born in those winter months, since we get, again, a lot of the vitamin D from the sun. And the kidneys also must be working properly because they convert vitamin D to its active form. We also know children with autism are very commonly having kidney and liver weaknesses at first. That can be strengthened, but just to know that they can be very, very commonly vitamin D deficient because of that being an added issue for them. Vitamin D deficiency is also connected to inflammatory bowel disease and liver and gallbladder inefficiency. There are many correlations between respiratory infections and low vitamin D levels. Another 2009 study showed newborns with acute respiratory infection were born to mothers who were deficient in vitamin D, especially again in those winter months. Vitamin D deficiency is also linked to asthma in children. If the mother is deficient in vitamin D during pregnancy, it can affect the brain tissue of the fetus in early development. Lack of this vitamin also has a connection to inflammatory bowel disease and asthma, as was previously mentioned. The vitamin D deficiency may increase toxicity from things like fluoride as well. Those having seizures that are put on anticoagulant drugs may be deficient due to the drug lowering vitamin D levels too. Supplementation will assist the body's defense against these issues. Sufficient amounts of magnesium are necessary in order to absorb vitamin D, since the body actually makes vitamin D when the skin is exposed again to sunlight. Overuse of sunscreen adds to the problem. In July of 2023, research, and I'll link to the study, found that more than 50% of children are vitamin D deficient. 50% of children ages 1 to 5 and 70% of children ages 6 to 11 have a vitamin D deficiency. We need to get our children outside more instead of television and video games and online screen time. Go for a walk, sit in the backyard, play a game, go to the park, or go for a bike ride. Anything outdoors is helpful. To increase your exposure to the sun, wear shorts and short sleeves if possible. A bathing suit is even better because we have more skin exposure. Days at the beach and days outside playing in water can be great because we're actually getting more exposure on our skin to the sun. Leave the sunscreen off for 10 to 20 minutes on hot days and then longer on cool days. Use your own discretion, of course, in safety, depending on the weather that you are in. The fear of skin cancer has resulted in a lot of vitamin D deficiency, and too much sunscreen and covering up completely eliminates our sun exposure. We don't want to burn, yet we need sun. Most commercial sunscreens contain cancer-forming chemicals, so be very careful about the ones that you choose to use. The skin is the largest organ of the body, and it will absorb whatever we put on it. Be sure to buy non-toxic sunscreens. Local health food stores can carry many brands. Jason is one that I know makes a natural mineral-based 45 SPF sunscreen that's specifically formulated for kids and their sensitive skin. So just be sure that it doesn't contain any of the bad ingredients if you're purchasing one. And even though you're at a health food store, that doesn't always mean they don't have some of the bad chemicals in them. Hopefully it's a quality health food store, and you can get an employee to help you as well. To test for vitamin D on your own from your home, directlabs.com has one, and this can also be ordered through a physician, but you can do this at home to avoid that additional cost. The vitamin D hydroxy test is only what was the last time I checked about $59 instead of the usual $230 plus that you might spend at a doctor's office, and it comes out without the expensive doctor appointment. A phone consultation with a physician is available from Direct Labs so that you can get further information on that. Otherwise, you'll be asking for this from a practitioner to check your vitamin D levels. When supplementing with vitamin D, again, be sure it is vitamin D3 because this is a most absorbable form. This is very important. Remember to take vitamin D3 also with food because vitamin D is one of the fat-soluble vitamins. So it needs to be taken with food for best absorption, especially things like good fats like coconut oil, olive oil, or even some nuts that have some good fats in them are helpful because they help the D3 absorb in us. And because it is a liquid or a fat-soluble vitamin, some people can take too much if they really overload. Now, I wouldn't worry about this, especially for a while, because most people are so deficient and it takes time to even build it back up. And if you start feeling not well, then you can increase your D levels for a few days and then drop back to the maintenance level again once you're feeling better. And that's another thing that could be helpful. But testing is the best way to know exactly where those D3 levels are. So again, there's some options there for you that I just mentioned. And liquids also have a far better absorption, especially for those with compromised digestive systems, such as our children with autism, and therefore then would be compromised absorption of it through the GI tract. So it's sold in many health food stores in forms such as liquids and pills. And get one with an oil basis. Vitamin D is a fat soluble again and needs oil to absorb. Often vitamin E is taken with it, or they will add that to it, or there will be some good oils in the vitamin D supplement. Or you can get a quality liposomal one that absorbs in the mouth. Remember to keep all oils, general oils and things like this in the refrigerator so they don't become rancid as well. Be sure you're giving your child the appropriate dosage for his age. Many supplements, especially for children, have very, very low dosages, and he may actually need to take several to get his needed daily requirements. So again, boosting it up for a little bit in the beginning before backing off to maintenance sometimes is needed. This number has risen from 400 IU per day, which used to be the child's recommended dosage, to as much as 2,000 IU now for a child and up to between 5,000 and 10,000 IU per day for some adults. Vitamin D levels are easily tested in blood work as well. There is a vitamin D formula that you can use. Basically, if the amount of vitamin D we need each day in supplemental form must depend on our level of current deficiency, and then how much of our body is exposed to sunlight every day, and then how much time your skin is exposed, or how much of your skin is exposed, depending on what you're wearing. There is a formula for a breakdown regarding the varying requirements of vitamin D, and this formula can be used for any person of any weight, including pregnant women. The formula is basically basic daily vitamin D dosage equals your body mass in pounds times the number 27. 27 IU is the amount of daily vitamin D needed to keep blood levels at their optimum without getting any sunlight. So, for example, the basic daily vitamin D dosage for a 50-pound child would be 50 times 27, or 1,350 IU per day. Again, you must also take into consideration the amount of D gained by sun exposure. If your child wears long pants and a short sleeve shirt and a hat, he receives only about 10% of sunlight on his skin. And it's also simple, but would sound confusing for me to go over the formula changed here in this podcast without you seeing it in text. Because when there's more sun exposure, the formula changes a little bit. And so I'm going to write that out in the show notes for you so you can look at it, which will be at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/178. And of course, I'll also write out what I just mentioned as well, because you might even be driving, or maybe you were scurrying to write that down. But this way, you'll be able to go to the show notes again at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/178. I will put in the formula there for vitamin D, how much you need per your weight for an individual. If your child wears, again, only shorts or swim trunks, like their lower legs or torso and arms are fully exposed, then he receives about 50% exposure. If we get over 50% sun exposure for as little as an average of 15 minutes per day, we have usually our daily quota of vitamin D for a day. Again, always be sure to take vitamin D3 and take it with food for best absorption. For example, again, taking it preferably with a food that contains some good fats in it. Remember, we've had an episode, and I'll link to it on the bad fats. You want to stay away from those bad fats. Some good fats are olive oil, coconut oil, nuts, poultry with the skin on. Things like that can be good fats. Making sure, again, to help that vitamin D3 absorb the way it is supposed to, so that you're actually getting the nutrient and the vitamins from whatever supplement that you are actually taking, because we know that not all are very bioabsorbable, and we want to make sure that we maximize that. And vitamin D3 is definitely something that is important to take, with fats being a fat soluble vitamin. So again, as we approach the winter months, make sure that you are getting adequate amounts of vitamin D3 daily for you, all of your children, your spouse, everybody in the family, so that they can stay as healthy as possible, to help naturally with the immune system being able to fight a lot of those colds and viruses. And especially, it's well known, and studies I've linked to, it's well known how many other things it can help for your body, including things in your brain. And it is the best natural flu fighter out there, in my opinion, absolutely, and in many research studies as well. So you can look into those research pieces that I linked to a couple of, and there are a ton of them on the internet if you want to look further. But I hope this was helpful for you, because I really want to make sure that you are just educated, knowledgeable, and doing the right things to keep your family healthy and happy, and doing it the safe and natural way. I hope this was helpful for you. Thanks for being here once again. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.